I mean, here's a headline at Axios. Trump is looking really hard. Looks like it's really hard to beat him. I have a back and forth that I've shared with you for years with Pete Wehner. Pete Wehner worked for the Reagan administration, the Bush administration, speechwriter, policy guy. He's a really good guy. He's a spiritual man, happens to be a never-Trumper, hates Donald Trump with the heat of a thousand suns. But here's what Pete's assessment is of the DeSantis campaign and these new polls that just came out. My gosh. I mean, here's the headline from Axios. New poll, Trump looks hard to beat. Trump crushes his GOP rivals, leading Ron DeSantis by a landslide 37 points nationally among likely primary voters in the first New York Times Siena College poll of the 2024 campaign. Trump's at 54%. DeSantis is at 17%. Here's what Pete says about the state of affairs. I don't think he'll mind if I share his comments with you in an email. He said, the problem is that people aren't buying what DeSantis is selling, most especially himself. He's intensely dislikable, Pete believes, and not particularly talented politically. And I don't see that changing. As I've said from the beginning, he was hugely overvalued. It's possible Trump collapses, though highly unlikely. If he does, I'd expect someone other than Ron DeSantis to emerge. But it would be a chaotic scramble, to be sure. Now, do you think Pete's right? Do you think his assessment is correct? See, here's my disconnect about Ron DeSantis, and I admit it. I admit this. I don't feel the contempt for Ron DeSantis when I see him interviewed that others apparently feel. You know, and a lot of people have an agenda. You know, I've got an agenda. It's an America First agenda. I want this country to win. And under the Democrat leadership, we're losing. We're losing big time. But I'm going to be behind any Republican who gets the nomination. But ultimately, I don't know who that's going to be. What I know is Ron DeSantis has been an excellent, exceptional governor. Ron DeSantis checks every box when it comes to domestic and foreign policy. So maybe Pete's right. Maybe Pete is... Ron DeSantis is unlikable. I saw a video clip over the weekend. He was talking to a little kid about eating a slushie or an icy, and he says, a lot of sugar in that, ha, ha, ha. And then he was mocked by a lot of people saying he's awkward and he's phony and he's not likable. And he doesn't have the charisma or the bombastic personality of Donald Trump. But this narrative that Ron DeSantis is intensely unlikable doesn't make sense to me. Do you see it that way? I mean, can you try, and listen, I guarantee you, most people listening to this show, watching on the Salem News Channel, you're a Trump supporter. Our GOP presidential straw poll confirms that. I think in our audience, about 82% of people who have taken the Mike Gallagher Show townhall.com straw poll, about 82% are Trump supporters. So if you go to mikeonline.com right now, you can take the straw poll. And feel free to cast your ballot. But even if you're a Trump supporter, do you find Ron DeSantis unlikable? Here's what he said to Megyn Kelly over the weekend. She had her interview on Friday on Sirius XM's the Megyn Kelly Show. Listen to what Governor DeSantis said to Megyn about the possibility of pardoning Trump should he get convicted.
Given your views on the weaponization of government, would you commit to pardoning him on any federal charges against him?
Well, what I've said is very simple. I'm going to do what's right for the country. I don't think it would be good for the country to have an almost 80-year-old former president go to prison.
So that's a yes.
It just doesn't seem like it would be a good thing. And I look at, like, Ford, pardoned Nixon, took some heat for it. But at the end of the day, it's like, do we want to move forward as a country, or do we want to be mired in these past controversies? And I think the public wants a fresh start. I think they want somebody that's going to focus on their issues.
Now, do you find that unlikable? Do you take umbrage at what he just said? Again, you know where I stand. I mean, while I admit that I'm going to support Ron DeSantis, I'll support Vivek Ramaswamy, I'll support Tim Scott, I'm going to support any Republican who gets the nomination. But you know where my heart lies. You know who I have enthusiastically backed for 6 or 7 years. But my question to you, give me a direct answer. Is Ron DeSantis that unlikable? And be objective. Even if you're a Trump supporter, you think that's a fair criticism? Is that the problem that Ron DeSantis faces on the national stage? Because I'm going to be honest with you, I don't get it. I don't see it, and I don't agree with that.